Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack something incredibly personal, something almost all of us lug around every single day, often without even realizing it. We're talking about emotional baggage. If you've ever felt completely weighed down by repeating the same painful patterns, or honestly just felt exhausted by your own mind, you're probably carrying a whole mix of emotions right now. Stuff like confusion, frustration, maybe even some grief. We look at our own heavy emotional suitcases and think, why can't I just put this down already? Well, right out of the gate, I want to tell you something absolutely crucial. The burden you are carrying makes sense. It really does. So let's dive into this, because changing the direction of your family story starts with understanding exactly what's inside that suitcase.
You know, a lot of people hit a certain point in life carrying this really painful, heavy belief. The belief that something must just be wrong with me. After years of dealing with intense anxiety or constantly twisting yourself into knots to please people, feeling emotionally numb, or just struggling to keep a relationship together, it is so incredibly easy to assume the problem is a personal failure. We can be so harsh on ourselves. But I really want you to let this question sink in for a second. What if the problem isn't that you're broken? What if that constant hypervigilance or that intense fear of conflict literally isn't a character flaw at all? And that brings us to the massive perspective shift we're exploring today. What if there's actually a real, tangible reason for your struggles? Like a biological reason, a psychological reason, a deeply, deeply human reason. Today, we're going to take that lens of harsh self-criticism, put it aside, and look at the actual science of why our minds and our bodies behave the way they do.
Let's start with Section 1, Why You Aren't Broken.
Think about the concept of adaptation. The reality is, a lot of the stuff we just casually brush off as dysfunction or baggage, well, it actually began as a brilliant adaptation. Humans are remarkably adaptable creatures. When we're faced with danger, uncertainty, neglect, or conflict, our brains don't just sit there. They immediately start scrambling for ways to protect us. And the ultimate goal is super simple and urgent. Stay alive, stay safe, avoid pain at all costs. So the really key takeaway here is that what you might be calling a weakness, it was actually just your mind and body brilliantly figuring out how to survive the specific environment they happen to be planted in.
Moving right along to Section 2, the biology of survival.
I absolutely love this analogy because it hits the nail on the head and makes the invisible so incredibly clear. Our survival system is amazing, right? It's helped humans survive wars, disasters, the whole shebang. So imagine a smoke detector that literally saved your life in a raging house fire. Pretty amazing piece of equipment. But now, imagine that exact same detector aggressively blaring every single time you just try to make a piece of toast. The detector isn't broken. It's just highly, highly sensitive. It's actually doing its job almost too well. And you know what? A lot of trauma responses work exactly this way. Your nervous system got incredibly skilled at detecting danger to keep you safe back then, and now it's just still detecting danger even when you're completely safe.
Your nervous system is constantly, always listening. Every single experience sends a little message. Safe, unsafe, connected, alone. If a kid grows up in an environment where the adult's emotions are super unpredictable, or love feels like it comes with strings attached, their nervous system adapts. It has to. They learn to stay on high alert, or to constantly earn approval, or to just shrink down and avoid conflict. And logically, those are great choices for that situation. See, a nervous system in a highly stressful environment is not sitting around asking, how do I help this person thrive and reach their full potential? No way. It is entirely focused on, how do I help this person survive the day? And sadly, sometimes simply surviving comes at the direct expense of our inner peace.
All right, let's dive into Section 3, Unpacking Generational Trauma.
This is where the science gets wild. Researchers have figured out that trauma doesn't just mess with our thoughts and emotions, it literally leaves a physical mark on the body itself. Which brings us to epigenetics. That's the study of how life experiences actually affect the way your genes are expressed. To put that into perspective, studies on mice have shown that a fear of specific smells can be biologically passed down for up to 2 generations. Crazy, right? It's a total game changer of a field because it proves that the intense stress our parents or grandparents went through might leave biological traces that dictate how we handle stress today.
Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, actually, let's picture your DNA as a massive, towering library of books. Trauma does not permanently damage or burn the books in your DNA library. The text in the books remains exactly the same. But, based on highly stressful experiences, certain pages get highlighted, or bookmarked, or dog-eared. These biological markers change how the body deals with future stress. And the wild part? Studies suggest these specific highlights can absolutely be passed down. Now, that doesn't mean your future is set in stone, but it does mean that some of those heavy items in your emotional suitcase, they were quite literally packed for you before you even showed up in this world.
But biology isn't the whole story. Families also pass down what we call an emotional inheritance. We inherit beliefs, coping mechanisms, relationship patterns, even our basic worldview. Think about it. A grandparent who survived severe poverty might unconsciously pass down this extreme anxiety around spending money. Or a family shaped by tragedy might naturally teach their kids to always be hypervigilant. And kids, they absorb these lessons completely naturally. It's just like picking up a regional accent or a family recipe. It just becomes how life is. Eventually, nobody even remembers who packed that specific item into the family suitcase. Everyone just assumes it's supposed to be there.
Which brings us to Section 4, the weight of shame.
For so many people, when they finally learn about these biological adaptations and emotional inheritance, they just feel this overwhelming wave of relief. And why is that? Because suddenly these behaviors that felt completely crazy or irrational actually start to make logical sense. Your anxiety has a valid reason. Your fear has a real history. Those emotional walls you built up, they were constructed for a very specific, fiercely protective purpose. Now, let's be clear, understanding the science doesn't magically erase the daily struggle, but it absolutely removes the shame. And make no mistake, shame is without a doubt the heaviest, most exhausting item in your suitcase.
So what does this actually mean for us on a random Tuesday, right? Understanding your trauma isn't a free pass to make excuses for harmful behavior. Healing still takes a ton of responsibility, effort, and real action. But it's kind of like trying to solve a giant 1,000-piece puzzle while completely blindfolded. That's what navigating life feels like before you understand your trauma. Getting this biological and historical awareness is step 2. You're finally taking the blindfold off. Step 3 doesn't mean the puzzle suddenly solves itself. The pieces are still sitting right there scattered on the table. But finally, for the very first time, you can actually see what you're working with.
And that leads us to our final section, Section 5, the choice to heal. Science is amazing at explaining stress responses, brain chemistry, epigenetics, and patterns. It really is. But there is one thing science simply cannot measure, and that's the unbelievable resilience of the human spirit. Every single day, people carrying mountains of historical and personal pain wake up and make a monumental choice. They choose to do the grueling work of therapy. They choose self-reflection. They choose the messy, difficult conversations and the hard work of forgiveness. And it's all based on one profound realization. I love myself, and I love my family enough to stop this cycle right here. That deliberate choice, that is the exact moment mere survival stops and actual growth begins. So I want to ask you directly, what does healing mean to you personally? Just take a second and think about which of your behaviors might actually be brilliant adaptations rather than character flaws. What survival strategies kept you safe back then but are just totally holding you back today? Imagine what could shift in your life right this second if you started looking at your own history through a lens of deep, compassionate understanding, rather than a lens of harsh criticism.
And that brings us to our final and definitely most important takeaway from this explainer. There is a deeply valid reason you carry what you carry. You didn't create all the pain in your life. You definitely didn't choose all those coping mechanisms that were just handed down to you. But today you have the opportunity to understand them. And understanding gives you power. Because the exact moment you finally realize why your emotional suitcase got so heavy is the exact moment you realize you don't have to carry its entire contents forever. You get to choose what to keep, and you get to choose what to put down. Thank you so much for joining me today. As you go about the rest of your day, I'll leave you with this. What is one heavy thing you are carrying right now that actually belongs to someone else? And what's going to happen when you finally let it go?